Good day, gents and ladies, and welcome to a live version of the Father's Fire podcast. As you know, every week we get together to explore the joys, the challenges, the triumphs, the sorrows, and yes, the fun of being a dad. And if you notice, I'm wearing different colors. I'm wearing black and orange for the Oregon State Beavers, which is kind of weird because my daughter has been, as you guys know, been in volleyball for so long. I think she was 6 years old, went through high school, played for Utah Valley University, and this past spring she graduated. And so now we're rooting for her boyfriend who plays soccer for Oregon State. And last week, the reason why we didn't have a podcast was because Judy and I were actually at Oregon State and then California, and I neglected to pre-record something. But that's all good. So guys, I'm super excited. I have a man that I really respect. Kevin Davis is my guest tonight. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you having me.
You know, it's funny because as I was getting ready for our little chat this evening, you know, I know you are a big family guy. You know, we had the opportunity to sit down and visit for a little bit at Air Force One. You and your wife were celebrating, I think, 28 years.
That's correct. Nice memory. Good job.
So congratulations on that. And the thing that really struck me as I was looking at all your stuff is, you know, I knew about Detailer's Helper. I knew about Maxed Out Man, but I didn't know about Davis Legacy Holdings, Rugged Restore, Vacation Rental Profit Method, Maxed Out Man. I mean, it just goes on. And you talk about being a maxed out man. You are the epitome of that.
Well, you know, it's funny because I just did, over the last 2 weeks, I've done a full business audit, right? Like I have a business coach that I've been working with, and we kind of went down and I went through all the tasks that I do with all my brands, and there's 10 of them, which is not really it's not really bragging rights. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and my hobby, other than my wife's hobbies and hanging out with her, is creating new businesses. It's just something I've always enjoyed doing. My kids have determined I'm actually a robot. I'm not actually a real person. So I don't need a lot of sleep.
For AI.
That's right. I wish. I need to learn how to use it so I can get some more stuff done. But yeah, I've got a few things going on, but I think that task list was 245 things long. And so there, you know, there's a few things that I can trim off and hand off. And my business coach was like, dude, you need like a team of 4 people to do what you're trying to do. And again, I don't recommend this to anybody, because when you do this many things, you don't do any of them to excellence, quite honestly. So that's a challenge that I have, and for sure.
So let's talk about that. I mean, you got 10 brands, You got a family, you got kids. How are you juggling it? I mean, obviously you have a business coach now that's going, yo, dude, you need to let go of this. But up until this point, how have you managed the juggle?
Well, I've been self-employed since 1999, 1998. So kind of unemployable at this stage in life. I do some consulting work, but like as far as being a full-time employee, I am, you know, my own boss. Actually, you know, Michelle is my boss. So, but you know, God bless me or cursed me, kind of depends on the days, but I'm built in such a way that my brain needs 4 or 5 things going all at one time. I used to write code. My first company was a web development company. And I actually just to sit down and write code. And this was back in like the early Netflix days when they actually had DVDs. I would put a movie on a separate computer so that one part of my brain could watch that movie while I wrote code. And I kind of still do the same thing with podcasts and sermons and that kind of thing. I'm a 6 to 6.5 hour a day sleep guy. Just a
You're
natural...
sleeping in.
Yeah, right. I mean,
you and I are cut out of the same cloth, man.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, and that's, if I naturally, when I'm on vacation, the same deal. It's not like I don't, and again, I don't wear that as a badge of honor. My wife needs 9. A lot of people need 7 or 8. It's just how I'm wired. And like you, sounds like. And it's just, if I'm on vacation and wake up naturally, almost 6.5 hours on the dot. So that allows me some more time to do it. And as far as like, I don't know if you know this, I heard this phrase, but there's really no such thing as multitasking, right? Like that's
No.
that's
Yeah.
an illusion. You're actually just switching from task to task to task. And I've actually been pretty proficient at that, to a point where I can sustain everything, and we've grown and done great, very fortunate. But if I bring in a team, and if I had relied on other people, I definitely would have made even better gains for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about, having kids. I mean, how many kids do you have?
I've got 2 girls, 25 and 23.
25, 23. So, man, God really trusted you to give 2 girls. Because
I mean,
I figure the way he looked at it with me is like, all right, I'm going to give you 4 boys, 3 boys, then I'll give you a girl, and then we'll adopt a girl and a boy. And so he's like, I'm going to save the girls for last because I recognize you need some refinement.
well, I think with that many, you are in a higher place in heaven than I do.
I don't
But
know about that.
but yeah, I was always, and I've talked about it forever with Michelle, that I think there are guys that are better girl dads than boy dads. And, I assume if God had given me a little boy, I would have liked the little boy, but I was such a little pill, hyperactive, because my brain was the same when I was 6 years old as it is at 51 almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just never could like relate to little boys and tolerate and have patience for boys. And so I think God just gave me girls because it's just a different temperament. And I'll readily admit that I was too hard on my girls a lot, so I took more of a firm hand than I probably should have. And, but we're all just making this stuff up as we go along.
Yeah, I think back. It's interesting because my oldest son and my youngest daughter came home. They've been home the last couple weeks. They just left actually yesterday and today, and we were in the kitchen. We were making cinnamon rolls. Well, I was watching the kids make cinnamon rolls, which is fun because now it's like they're taking on stuff that Dad used to do, and they're actually better at it than me in some ways. But we got into a conversation about being a dad, and my dad and my oldest son said, he goes, yeah, Dad, you're really different than you were with us older boys, with us younger girl, with the younger kids. And I said, yeah, I admit that. I recognize 100% that I was a different father when I had you versus them. And hopefully I got better over time. And I think early on, especially with the boys, there was just like this underlying, all right, I got to empower these boys. I got to give them the foundation where they can go and fly on their own, right? And I think I was a little bit more rigid in my younger days as a dad versus, as we got older, and I'm like, you know what, you can just breathe a little bit and let your kids grow. Did you find that in yourself?
Yeah, I mean, my adult relationship is definitely something that I'm really enjoying. My older girl, she was an adult at like 13, but the young one's a little bit less mature, and not in a bad way, just growing up in a different, being the baby of the family. She kind of wore that thing. But I, to your point, when we first had our first child, I was this was .com days. I was in the corporate world. I had tons of employees. I traveled all the time, and I screwed that up. Like, I had no idea what I was doing. I saw this little baby and I was like, this is the mom that, mom knows what to do. I don't have any idea what to do. And so I made the great mistake of then retreating to work, because I know what to do there. I get the accolades. it's a step 1 through 25, and I don't feel like I'm gonna fail this child. And so we spent the first 6 months of our oldest her life. I was just gone. I was traveling 5-6 days a week, missed the first 6 months. We ended up having some stuff that came out of that almost ended our marriage, honestly. And but it's a crazy story, if you'll indulge me. But
Please.
So at the end of that 6 months, Michelle was like, "Hey, I need to know if you want to stay married, because you're about to no longer be married." So like that, and I was like, "All right, well, what does that look like?" She said, "I need you to be home. I need you to not work as much. I need you to not travel as much and all that." So I actually had to go to my boss, and this was a startup company. I started, and this is .com days, so there's just money flowing like crazy back then. But I had to go to my boss and I said, "Hey, I'm having this situation at home. I need to focus on my family. I can't travel anymore. I need to come in at 9 and leave at 5. And these are kind of the rules." And he was like, and I fully expected to get fired. There was no question in my mind that I was going to get fired. I had reconciled that in my mind. We had already planned on, we were in Connecticut, which is a very expensive place to live. So we had already resigned to the fact that, look, we may have to move. Right. We knew that this was what was going to happen. So he was like, "Well, that's really interesting, because we have this new position that has been created through the growth of our company. We had you in mind to take this position." And so he was like, "You're going to have 250 global employees. You're going to stick to the office. You don't have to travel. You can work from home 3 days a week. When you are in the office, just come in normal time. And oh, by the way, here's an extra $50,000 raise to go on top
gosh.
of it." So, I mean,
wow.
like, you talk about God's blessing on a decision to change your life, because that is essentially what I did. I turned my entire focus from work and being money motivated, success motivated, and all that. And it probably sounds strange to say that, given my normal, given how many companies I have and all that. But I'm not money motivated. I'm not really success motivated. I changed that ideal to, I want to work and make money to build a life that I want to have, which is, happy married, great kids, fun times, adventure, say yes to life, all that stuff. And so that began this great adventure. I worked for that company for maybe another 2 years, started my first company, moved out of Connecticut, and then have been self-employed. And I was at home the entire time my girls were growing up. My wife's a stay-at-home mom, so they grew up with two parents at home all the time. And they used to joke, they're like, "Well, what does dad do all day?" Which, and so all that to say that's kind of how I began that. And to answer your question, like, my ideology back then, I was more disciplinarian. Both my parents are divorced. I basically started raising myself at age 7. My mom's a drug addict, alcoholic. I had no adult supervision at 7. And so I raised myself. So I still didn't know what I was doing. So I was kind of making it up. And I developed this like ideology of, I'm sorry. Like, I just apologize to my kids all the time, and to my wife, because I would screw it up, but then show them that I acknowledge how I screwed it up, acknowledge how we're trying to get better. And then over time, I think that I did a pretty good job. They're both responsible adults that left home at 17. So
I think there's a real key in what you just said. Number one, acknowledging where you fell short and owning it and apologizing. And the inference is that you followed that up with change.
mm-hmm.
Because I think a lot of men get into the cycle where they're apologizing, but they're really not recognizing what they were doing wrong. They just saw that they hurt somebody and they're not going, "All right, what did I do? What do I need to become?" And notice that I didn't use the word, "What do I need to change?" because I think a lot of times we get in this mindset of, I need to change, I need to do these things, instead of focusing on what do I need to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about, if people are struggling with their weight, we always hear this, well, I need to go on a diet. I need to change the way I eat, instead of, I want to be fit. I want to live healthy, right? And when you get into the mindset, especially as a dad and a husband, of going, all right, what kind of dad do I want to become? What kind of husband do I want to be? What kind of partner do I want to be with my wife? And what does our relationship look like both now and in the future? And when you can change your mindset into becoming, all of a sudden the little to-dos become a natural output of that decision to become more than you were yesterday.
Yeah, 100%. And that's, with Max Out Man, for example, one of the things that like I always say, hey, just be more than, like, you have this potential, and we have the tagline, be who you're made to be. And it is that ideal, like what you're saying. Like we had someone tell us that when our kids got to be teenagers and their heads started spinning around, like, the Omen or whatever, kind of, we were bound to determine to sleep with our lights on, because we were pretty sure that one or both of them were going to try to kill us at that time. But so when they became teenagers, but we got some great advice that our job is to be a launching pad for those girls. And to your point of, that is something that we needed to be, right? Like, that's not a to-do list. That is something that's that's kind of a way of living, to be them. And it's really interesting because over time, I really wanted to be, and I've told my girls, I'm like, I wish that I were a better father then, and I'm trying to be a better father now to you in the different ways that you need me to be as a 25-year-old, as a 23-year-old, than when you were 13, 14, 15. But, being able to be that launching pad. And what's ironic and what surprised me is Father's Day this year. And I don't know if I told you this story. I've told this story a ton. I got a text from my youngest daughter. Let me preface this by saying my youngest daughter and I are enough alike that we butt heads a lot. But
Yep.
she gets the trophy for most antagonistic, and I get the trophy for most reactive. And so, as you can imagine, antagonism and reactivity, we have to have a safe word in our family that basically we stop talking about certain. And she's ultra liberal. I'm not. so family gatherings can be a little bit of challenge. But she sent me this text, and this goes to what you're saying, that she said, I can't imagine a better father to show me what it's like to love a woman. First of all, that was a huge thing. And I'm so thankful that you were the type of dad that I knew that no matter what, you were always, and I'm going to choke up again. You were always there for me, and I knew I could always count on you no matter what. Like, no question in her mind that it didn't matter what happened, what she did, what circumstances she found herself in. And that's what that launching pad is supposed to look like, I believe. Because we know that you can always come back, if you need to. And both my girls are fiercely independent. So for her to say that is, it was crazy. I cried for a day and a half.
Dude, I love that, and I'm glad you got to experience that, right? It's like you really don't see the fruits of what you did as a dad during, when they're little, the teen years, the chaos of that. You really don't see the fruit of what you did until they go off and become adults for themselves. And, I love your analogy of being a launching pad. Mine has always been, look, we have given you the tools to fly.
Mm-hmm.
So go soar and show me what you can do. Show me the gifts that God gave you and lean into those. And I always tell them, why not you? Right? If everybody else had these big dreams, why not you? So go get it. But when you need to rest, you have a place to nest.
Mm-hmm.
So come home, regroup, reset, and then go out, right? And I love that imagery of launching, because I think a lot of dads struggle, especially with letting go, especially moms. Moms really struggle a lot, that I see, is letting their kids go. Instead of being that launching pad, they talk about being a launching pad, but yet there's still tethers holding them back.
Yeah, they forgot to
Whoa,
take
whoa,
off
where are you
all
going?
the guide wires are still on, right?
That's not what I really meant. and and I think, empowering your kids to be individuals. And I have that same daughter, where I react and she antagonizes, and we kind of feed off each other, but we've learned how to dance with each other.
Hmm.
And part of it is, there was a lot of emotional trauma from when she was a kid, and we had to work through it, and I had to prove that I was always going to be there for her.
Right.
Right, I always had to prove that. And I think that, a lot of men struggle with, right, I'm not a good dad, I'm not doing these things, I should have done that. And my wife's like, cut out the shoulda woulda couldas and just be the dad that your kids need. And a lot of times, all they need is you to be present and to be their biggest fan and go, what do you need? So I have a question for you. And I think I know the answer, because I think you would answer it the way I will, but I want to ask it anyway. What has been, how have you transitioned from being a dad of kids and teenagers to now being a dad of kids that are moving out, they're independent, they're building their own lives?
I mean, we've had some experience because both of our kids were homeschooled. They both graduated at 16. And so they actually left home at 17, both of them, and not in a bad way. Like they had their own
Right.
apartments and all that, went to work locally, and they were just ready to go. And so we've been able to have this transition, but it's really funny because it's great to be a support for these adult kids, and because, for example, my oldest is married. Her wife is in the military. She's deployed in Syria right now. So she started this home improvement. She's got a house that's 120 years old. So she is currently
Wow.
she's currently slowly renovating this house. And she's already said that she'll never buy a house this old again because it's been crazy and miserable and everything. But she texts me like 3 times a day and about, hey, Dad, what is this? How do I do this? Why are the studs in the wall at 16, 19, 21, 17? I'm like, that's because your house is 120 years old and it's been rebuilt 6 times. But and she said, I bet you didn't know when I said we were going to renovate the house, that was the we was you and me, not me and Lauren. And so, but that's like, to be able to be that constant resource for her and to be able to give her that support and encourage her, because she'll send me something that she did, a little drywall patch or something like that, and she'll say, I knew you would be proud of me because I did this. Like she still needs that validation even at 25
Yeah.
years old, and she probably will need it when she's 35 and 45, and if I live that long, 55. And with the younger one who's 23, she's a paramedic, so she actually runs her own truck, which is, a young female in DeKalb County, Atlanta, Georgia, which is one of
Oh,
the most
wow.
dangerous, drug
Yes.
infested
Yep.
places. No offense if you guys live in DeKalb County, but it's a rough place. So she's very busy. She does crazy stuff. She has gone through a series of, let's say, less than ideal choices of boyfriends. We'll put that, and she's now dating a new guy, and it was kind of funny because she actually dated a bunch of either agnostics or atheists, which is, again, great when you're a Christian parents and all that, right? So, but her first thing was, she said, I'm dating this new guy, and oh, don't worry, he's a Christian. And we're like, well, what kind of Christian? She goes, well, the first time I went to his house, he had his Bible open on his desk and he had been reading it that morning. I'm like, thank you, Lord. Right. Like, but to be able to then explore with her what were the challenges of some of these other relationships? What kind of things can you do this time, giving her that advice and be able to go through and transition to that. But one thing I will say that with our girls, and I think that what I've seen from the outside looking into you and your wife, is that we made our marriage the number one priority. So
Yes.
for our youngest to say, I learned what it means to have a loving husband from you. We always put each other first. And Michelle hates it when I tell this joke, but I'll say, hey, it's like I think Bill Cosby said it, but he was like, I'll make two more look just like you. She's the most important person in the house, right? Like that. It's so, but basically that just means that it's God, mom, me, you. That's kind of, and not in a demeaning way, but understanding that my wife and I are going to be together a heck of a lot longer than you live in my house. And so that's the most, and I think that helps with that launching pad and the empty nesting. And because if you look back and each of you had a relationship with your children and forgot to have a relationship with each other, then that's a real challenge. So that's a long-winded answer to that.
Well, no, I love that because I think a lot of, especially couples that are in that stage where their kids are leaving, part of the reason why they're struggling is because they wake up and they're strangers to each other. Yeah. It's like, whoa, my purpose with my kids just flew out the window. It just skyrocketed off the launching pad. And now I'm left with this person that I'm not sure I know. Yep. I'm not sure I like anymore. I'm not sure if I want to be with them. And yes, Judy and I have been very purposeful in our relationship. I mean, our 35th anniversary is coming up next year. And I can probably count on my hand the number of times we've missed a weekly date, right? Our kids know Friday or Saturday night, mom and dad are going out on a date. They're spending time together. And even when we brought our kids that we adopted home, the first couple of years, we could not leave the house without one of us being home. So we got very creative and had date nights in our bedroom, and we made cookies and escaped and made ice cream floats, and we did all of these things to make sure that we were investing in ourselves. And it really hit home the power of that about 3 months ago when my youngest daughter Kaylani was talking to Judy, my wife, about her boyfriend Teo. And she said, Mom, he treats me the way Dad treats you. And man, to hear that, it just hit my heart, right? Because it showed me that the things that I'd been doing over the years had such an impact on my daughter that she was looking for that kind of relationship, and she found it.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important lesson, is that, I think about you as a young man, a young boy at 7 years old, literally raising yourself and going, all right, now I'm going to get married. I'm going to have my own family. How do I be a dad when I didn't see that emulated?
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely, I mean, not having that example to, and from even being married, right? Like, what does married with little kids look like? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. So, well, looking back, I mean, obviously you and I could keep going, but looking back, right? And if you were going to give advice to other dads, what are one or two things that you think are really important for them to do, either in their relationship with their mom or, just their interaction with the kids?
I mean, I think you pointed it out and you didn't say it outright, but I think you need to be the man that you want. If if you have sons, be the man that you want them to be like in terms of character. Obviously, all children, all people have different wants, needs, desires, those things. But teach them from a character standpoint, teach them how to be the man that you believe that they can be, and more importantly, who God made them to be. If you have daughters, be the kind of man that you want them to be married to. eventually. And I think it's really important if you have daughters to actually date your daughters. And I'm not sure if you did this. I'm pretty sure
We
you
did.
probably did.
Yep.
Be able to take them out. I make a habit with Michelle that unless I'm physically unable to because of where we're parked, I open her car door for her pretty much every time. I make a huge effort. And so that's something that my girls learned. And the youngest, who started, they've been dating a couple months, and she's like, Dad, he's just like you. He got mad at me because I got in the car without letting him open the door for me. And so, like, showing her what that looks like, and to really be that kind of person, and putting your marriage first as their priority. Again, Michelle, having my daughter tell me that was the most important thing for her, is to be able to see that, and to be able to recognize, even with these other boyfriends that were not great, to be able to see what she was missing, and be able to distinguish between those two, and just have grace on yourself. I mean, one thing that I've learned. So I have one daughter that's a super liberal antagonist. I have one daughter and again, I'm a Christian father, and we've dealt with this. We talk about this, but my daughter is married to a woman. And that was something that was a difficult transition, for us. It's something that we love Lauren. We love that whole thing. It's we figured it all out, but all that to say, you can do everything you possibly can, and things still may not work out the way that you think they're going to work out. Yeah. So have grace on yourself to realize that that's not your fault, that things don't go exactly according to the way you thought they would.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And, we probably should have another podcast, because my oldest son, he's gay and has a partner, Matt, and Matt is he is a salt of the earth. I love him to death. I mean, they've been together about 5 years. They live down in Marina del Rey, and they have such a good relationship, right? And I guess at the core, I want my kids to have somebody that loves them and takes care of them and respects them and encourages them and is a partner, all that stuff, right? But, kind of wrestling with that traditional mindset can be tough. And that's probably another discussion for another day. But I really appreciate, you taking the time, your wisdom, your fortitude, the things that you've shared. And mad props to a 7-year-old boy that said, you know what? I'm going to change the cycle.
Yeah, I grew up pretty darn fast, and saw some things that I shouldn't, but it makes I don't worry about stuff. Very few things bother me now, because there was such a big trauma back in the day. I'm like, oh, I stubbed my toe, or I'm having trouble with whatever, like, big deal. It's not that big a deal, really.
That's good. So that's cool. So, guys, my guest, Kevin Davis, phenomenal gentleman. His wife is an angel. I had a great opportunity to visit with her. Just a sweetheart. So how do people connect with you, Kevin?
I think in this context, go to maxedoutman.com. You can find me on Facebook. That's our project for men. I think, what we're trying to do is have talks about, marriage and kids and sex and health and fitness and a lot of the things that you're talking about as well. Yeah. But that's kind of our, we have a little bit of a different slant probably, or even if it's the same slant, doesn't matter. No,
that's good.
But yeah, maxedoutman.com is probably the easiest way. I'm on all the socials and all that too. So
that's cool. So guys, please go check him out. And connect with him. A great model of a good man, good husband, good father. And that's really what the goal of Father's Fire is, to highlight and discover and discuss, the challenges. We've had that, I was thinking back, I think this is my 240th something episode.
Awesome.
We're coming up on 250, right? And we've talked to men of all backgrounds, of all colors and races and cultures and experiences. And what I found is that most men are really trying. We're just trying to figure it out, right? Yeah. And we're inventing it as we go. And in the process, we're becoming who God intended us to be.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
sometimes I think we repulse from the challenges of life and feel like we failed. Like to your point, give yourself some grace, because those trials are where you grow, where you discover, where you become. So embrace the process. Thank you guys so much for joining. Thank you, Kevin, for being my guest. And we will check you guys same time, same bad channel, just next week.
Thanks,
right
Jody.
here on Father's Fire.
Thanks,
brother.
All right, see ya.
See ya.